what they're hoping to do. And then we have a few questions that I have. I'll ask them for all of us and then take some questions from the floor. I have no idea how long this will take. We won't go fishing for questions at the end, but if it takes 45 minutes, that sounds about right to me. But this is important to be, it's an important step in governing our community. So with that, I would invite you to introduce yourselves and give us a couple of minutes of why you would like to be in charge of some of the parts of the business of the community. This says there's 10 minutes, so there's 2 of you. So let's say not more than 5 minutes. You don't have to use the whole 5 minutes. So would you like to start?
You go ahead, Dave. You.
Yeah, that's fine. I'm Dave Linton. Originally was born and raised in Pittston, Maine. Went to the Gardner School Systems. I'm a 4th generation Pittston resident, really. And logged my whole life until 2000. I met my wife, Mandy. We were married in 2002. Moved out here. She's a 5th-generation resident of Reedfield and did tree work all around town. Many of you probably have seen me hanging out of a tree somewhere and all over central Maine. And then in 2018, my wife asked me to join her as a partner at the sawmill, running Edgar Clark and Sons pallets. Her dad wanted to semi-retire. He calls working 12 days, half day, 12-hour days, half days. So if you know my father-in-law, that's a half day for him. So, oh, I forgot the second half of the question. This is a thing to me. I just seen politics in general go astray from what I think it should be. I think where politics started was, especially at the town level, is for somebody to serve as like a civic duty, just to coordinate the things that we need. And I just seen it go too far the other way, too polarized, too many pet projects, not enough input from the public. And I don't like where it's going. So here I am.
Okay, thank you. Dennis?
Hello, my name is Dennis Price, Dennis Alvin Price, if you want to know the whole thing. And I am excited to be running for re-election to the select board in Reedfield. I moved to Reedfield because of how it matched my lifestyle. I bought a nice property with a little house and a beautiful view of the sun coming up, and I had friends here and I loved it. So when it came to setting up my life somewhere in Maine, it seemed like it was a perfect fit. In 2017, I ran for the select board. I too was disgruntled with how politics were going and wanted to do something for my community and try to contribute, make a difference somehow. And I went to a budget committee meeting. And then I found out that no one had taken out papers to run for the select board. And I felt like that was exactly the thing that I was trying to find out how we could avoid is for folks to get involved. And that's when I ran for the select board. Now I wanted to make a difference, and I figured that I could be a keyboard warrior and do some Facebook posts and send some emails, or I could actually do something. And so I ran in 2017 and I was elected. And in the last 6 years, I've been a part of some amazing advancements in our town. And I've done that by listening, communicating, deliberating, and taking action. We have a free to residence beach, new recreation opportunities, more efficient transfer station, renovations to the library and the fire department, moving to an annual community celebration and heritage days are just some of the projects I've been lucky enough to collaborate on. I've helped foster new business in town, worked to support over 90 different businesses currently listed on the Reedfield website, which is the listings that businesses get for free. I worked with some insanely dedicated folks on the comprehensive plan as well as the Fairgrounds Recreation Plan Committee, and both have produced consensus results that folks agree on. Now, I don't normally like to toot my own horn, but the point of tonight is to play the trumpet. So I don't mind sharing that these collaborations are a way of showing where my priorities are and what they are, and to work together to get the results that move Reedfield forward. And then I hope on June 13th, your vote can help me do just that.
Well, thank you. We have some pre-established questions, which I think you've been sent if you, this isn't supposed to be a extemporaneous speaking challenge. It's supposed to be thoughtful. But there was a question that was raised earlier today, and I just want to read something to you and ask for you to think about how you agree or disagree with this. It has to do with civility and how you see it playing out. And both of you had frustrations with politics and political influences in government. So this is kind of a good place to start, and we'll get into some details. Now, normally we would go down the line of starting with different people, but there's only two of you. So I think Dennis, we'll start with you. I'll give you the head start, give you a second to think about it, but this is what I'm going to read to you, and you can both comment on it as you wish. It has to do with civility. Civility has deteriorated in the last decade at every level of public interaction, including sadly here in Reedfield. But civility is critical to good governance, even in a small town. Any thoughts or comments on that sentiment?
Sure, absolutely. I agree. I think that we have just started to, what I would say, there was a height of I guess, incivility. And I think of things like that. When I think of civility, I think of common sense, manners, not necessarily politeness, but I was raised to say, yes, ma'am, and no, ma'am, and no, sir, and thank you, and that sort of thing. And I think that as we see with communications, sometimes folks get so caught up on what they think is the right thing that they're sort of focused on it too much. You can't see the forest for the trees, so to speak. So I've really tried to, listen to build relationships on the select board, and to make sure that, when you are addressing people and you are talking to people, that they get respect. We do even have some standards of conduct for our meetings. And so I think that's important, and I do my best to try to be civil whenever we have folks interacting.
David?
Agree 100%. Again, that's one of the main reasons why I'm here. I don't like how it's gone. And I see even the meetings that I'd been to in the past, and the simple fact that the public gets 5 minutes for comment. I mean, 5 minutes for the entire public doesn't see, it kind of seems, it's a kind of sending a message that we don't really want to hear from you. And I don't like it. I think we need to change that. We need to get more people involved, make them feel comfortable being involved, voicing their opinion, not belittled because they see things from a different side of the aisle than somebody else does. Everybody has their own opinion, and they're entitled to it. This is America, and that's the way it should be. And we should welcome all opinions, and nobody should be, even business-wise, I see people afraid to stand up because, well, my business might suffer for it. And it shouldn't be that way. We should be as a community and work together.
Okay, I think I should have read the meeting rules just to make sure I don't violate any of the rules.
They're right over there.
I know you're sitting right over there. You'll point to them if I don't, right? Okay, so David, we'll start with you on one of the questions that we had here, and you can be expansive on these. I know that you've touched on some of these things already and things you've said, but since you'll be leading an important town function, the Board of Selectmen, is there one thing, and obviously we can't get everything down to one thing, but is there one thing that you would wish to communicate voters now to encourage them to participate in the election, not in town business, but how do you want to think about getting, if necessary, people engaged in that part of this process?
Democracy is people voting and hearing from people, and I'm a big fan of that. I supported the secret ballot because we were only getting 75, 80 people to vote at a town meeting for that exact reason, that people didn't like to stand up and have everybody else know what their opinion is. So the more the merrier. If we have every registered voter in this town vote on every election, that's what I would strive for. And then you really see the majority rules. You're not getting a small piece, but I think now people feel like their vote doesn't count. I get a lot of feedback from people saying, well, there's no point in me even going down there and voting because they're going to do whatever they want anyway. That's what I'm getting from people. And I think that needs to change. We need to make people more comfortable being involved down here and voicing their opinion and getting to the polls. And how you do that, your guess is as good as mine, I guess.
Have a barbecue. Well, but that's where it starts, if they can get involved. So that's what I'm hoping we could talk about. If you had something specific in mind, without giving away your campaign strategy of how you would encourage people to participate.
Aside from dragging them out of the house and making them go vote, yeah, I think making them comfortable to come vote and making them feel like their vote actually counts and their voice is heard when they're at these meetings.
Okay. Then the same question about getting people, what would you want to communicate to voters about encouraging them to participate?
Absolutely. I also agree. I think you have to know that the voters are the ones who make a difference. And the voters are the ones who have a say. And we try very hard to send out education, send out, record meetings, put things online, things like that to make sure that no one ever feels like their vote is ever thrown away. That's not anything that anybody wants. So I think it's important to know that when you vote in this election, especially, there are incredible, what I would call legacy items that are a part of this vote. Things like the comprehensive plan, things like the question that asks, about projects in conservation and recreation at the fairgrounds area, things like that. People who are going to support you and represent you on the select board and in the school board. So I would say that every election is important, and not every election is won by the way that you vote. And that's why we have elections. So there are winners and there are losers. And sometimes that's the way it goes, and the majority rules. And that's generally what we find. I always want to encourage voting. I think we have great staff at the town level that helps with absentee voting. A lot of people feel more comfortable doing that these days. So that starts. We also have an amazing staff and facility at the Kents Hill School that they let us use. It's bigger. It's got more space. There's more room. I think that's a great collaboration too, to be able to go there. So I think there are strategies already in place logistically that help people vote. I think there's information out there that help educate people on what they do and vote on. And I think that's very important.
So I'll just ask you both a follow-up. If you were giving yourself a goal of saying, I really believe in this, getting more people to vote, and you took up a personal goal of getting, let's say, 50 people who hadn't voted before, how would you start with you? But we'll come back, David.
Mm-hmm.
How would you think about, what kinds of things would you think of to encourage 50 people who hadn't, I was going to say 100, but that may be a little ambitious. How would you get them? How would you get 50 more people to vote than might not as of today? By today, was it June 13th, June 11th?
Yes. I think there's a couple different ways. I think some people don't know when absentee ballots come out, and that's May 13th. I think that some people don't know how late they can, when they can turn things in. I think some people don't think that maybe they're not registered and they don't know the registration process. So first and foremost, I would really want to make sure and educate people about the way that we vote in Readfield. I think that's number one. And then number two is find out why people aren't voting. Do they feel like, if they feel like their vote is being thrown away, why? Why is that the case? It can't just be an empty complaint. There's got to be some reason behind it. And that's what I want to find out. So those sorts of things, I think education, I think finding out why folks don't want to vote, and just explaining to them that it's the best part of democracy.
And then you get 50 people, right?
I could.
Okay.
I think so.
David, you got to get
Maybe 100.
I'll give you 51 this time. Okay.
51. Well, that might be tough.
This is the question.
It's a small town.
How would you personally approach a goal of getting 50 people, we'll make it fair, more people to vote than might otherwise if nothing was done? If you did nothing other than what you would do to make the 50 vote, not make them get the vote.
I think you've got to get people involved and get circles involved and remind people because it is a small town and not everybody relies on the internet, although there are, you put a lot of information out on the internet. Not everybody does rely on the internet, and not everybody knows what the issues are. The best way to fire people up is to go talk to them directly about the issues and how they're going to affect them. Typically, when you see the biggest turnouts in any election or vote is when you have a hot topic. And
So we seem to have a hot top. I think we have a hot topic today, do we? Is this a large group for Reedfield? No? Was there a dinner involved tonight? No? Okay.
well, what I come?
Yeah, I know, right?
I was promised a
Before I
snack.
came.
I
Thank
got
you.
water. so
Missed
I-
my paycheck. So those are those kinds of things you think could actually.
More
induce
information?
50
Yeah,
people to get-
yeah.
That would be a good thing. I'm assuming 50 more would be toward your goal.
Yeah.
Right? Okay. I think we started with you last time, so.
I think you started with Dennis.
Okay.
Did it?
He should be up
I don't know.
Well, I wrote down Dennis, but I couldn't remember whether that was because he started there or he ended there. Okay, so we'll start with Dennis. Okay, so think of one, let's start with one. We could do two. Really big challenges for the town coming up in the next 2-3 years that you would want to be involved in now. Challenges for the next couple of years you want to be involved in now too, because you can think by being involved now, you can make a difference in the outcome.
Oh, one of the big challenges of the town is the rising cost of everything, the rising cost of services, the rising cost of fuel, repairs on vehicles, trucks, and everybody's feeling the crunch on that. So one of the things I'd like to be involved with is bringing back the relationship with the contractors around Central Maine and the community, because honestly, we're failing. Reedfield, people really don't want to work for Reedfield. I've heard that denied. I've personally worked with and have a lot of these guys on speed dial throughout Central Maine for the last 35 years. I know them. I talk to them. So if you want to keep costs down, you need competition. When only one guy's bidding on stuff and guys that from out of town are bidding on stuff, it used to be everybody around here, and all the best roads in this town were built by local guys right here. They were proud of it. They wanted to do the work, and they wanted to do the work at a fair price because it was their tax dollars and it was their town. And we're losing that. We didn't have anybody to bid on the plow contract. So that would be one of the things I want to get involved in right away, because I think I can help bridge that relationship again.
Okay. Dennis, same question. What one challenge for the next couple of years would you want to be involved in now to affect the outcome when it happened?
I think there are a couple different projects. I think the sidewalk project on the Church Road is going to be a challenge, and working through that and just trying to make the best decision. I think that the fairgrounds recreation area is going to be a challenge. But I also think that there are other smaller things around that we have also seen and been able to deal with pretty
I
well.
just want to you're going to get into my other question.
Oh, sorry. Yes.
So I just want to just take one and say, these
Okay.
are the things, this is something I really want to work on and I think I can make a difference. How would you do it starting? June?
I would say probably one of the things that I am really dedicated to is the fairgrounds recreation project.
Mhm.
I think that things like that are vital to our town. I think that it is it's so important to have that ability to not only offer equity, but also have another opportunity to have a place for recreation for the whole town. And I think about those sorts of things that just make our town better. It raises the whole town when you have ways that you can celebrate it and see those sorts of impacts.
Okay. Any questions at this point for anybody on the topics we've been discussing? Something come to mind you can't wait to hear more about? Sir.
On the subject of getting people to vote.
I'll try to repeat your question because I'm not sure the system will pick you up. So go ahead.
Let me try again louder.
Okay.
On the subject of getting people to vote, I have to say I'm one of the people that struggles with that because I'm faced with a thicket of information. I have to acknowledge, I give you more homework. That's- I mean, for one, can you acknowledge that difficulty? And two, can you do something about it?
Okay, so the question is, in the process of encouraging more people to vote, there's a tremendous amount of information and we're getting a sign. Go ahead. Okay, great. I will try to do that. I got interrupted now. I forgot the question already. So the question was, there's so much information out there. How do we thin the information down so that people who are overwhelmed by the information or become unable to sift it and make decisions? How would you sort that down for them so that they would feel more comfortable actually having a decision
Sure.
to vote?
This year, every year when we do the warrant, we send out to every Reed Field home an information sheet. This year, in fact, I was very excited this year to try to change the look of that and do just what you're asking, is to take sometimes what looks like so much black and white text and turn it into something that allows me to see what each question is about. It refers me to where each article is, things like the land use ordinance that's changing, it gives that. So this year we went with a totally new design for that, because that's something I'm always thinking about, is how do we bridge the gap between too much information where you feel like you're stuck and you can't process, and too little information so that you don't really know what you're voting for. I think that that's something I know that we have done for a fact this year in order to help that.
David?
I would say put it in simple terms that people can understand. When we got several items all bundled into one, people don't know really what they're voting for oftentimes. Money set aside for certain things that's lumped under one category. You got to do your homework to figure out what that's going for. I don't like that. I don't think it's transparent. I don't think it should be that way. I think the taxpayer should know exactly what they're spending their money on. And it's a simple line item.
So can I ask you, without putting you on the spot, do you feel that, have you observed any of the information that has been sent out, and did it improve your ability to understand what was doing? Can I ask you a question? Okay, that's fair. Does anyone else have a comment on the package of information that might have been sent out this year as to whether it was?
Yeah, not yet. It hasn't been.
See?
Yeah, we haven't. Yeah, it's too early in it. So
It's too early. It's only a month and a half, right?
yes, but we haven't. Yeah.
Absentee ballots.
Yeah, it's going out before absentee ballots go out.
Okay, so the information that's been discerned from the audience is that the package of information that we were discussing actually hasn't been sent out yet, but it will be going out before the absentee, hopefully enough time before the absentee ballots that it helps the absentee ballot voters, which I believe you said was May 13th.
Yeah, they'll get a
Absentee
copy of it.
ballots
Yeah.
go out. So keep your eyes peeled for that, because I'm hoping that this conversation we're having tonight will actually drive some more people to understand how to come and vote.
Mhm.
I mean,
Absolutely.
That's a good goal of governance, right? Okay. Anyone else have a question in the back there?
Yeah, this is for David. You mentioned concern with rising costs, and you mentioned that contractors don't want to work in Reedfield. Did I hear that correctly?
You did.
Can you tell me why that is?
Okay, so the question was, there was a comment made about contractors feeling less than enthusiastic about working in Reedfield. And the lady has asked David, we'll ask Dennis as well if he has any insights about why it might be that people are reluctant to either work here or apply for work here. David?
There is a history with contractors bidding on contracts here where things have not gone the way they should. Like I got back to alluded to why I'm running. There's a lot of personal vendettas and polarization in this town, and it shouldn't be there. And when we're throwing plow contracts out and on one premise and then 5 minutes later accepting them, although they didn't meet the requirements on another, you got rid of two bidders right there in one shot that will never bid on this town again. I'm not saying just the plow contract alone. We all talk to each other. All contracts, I've worked with all these guys. Everybody works with each other. They all talk. And you burn one of them, and you burned a lot of them. And word gets around fast.
Just a follow-up question. Are you talking about somebody working for the town?
No, I'm talking about contracted work for the town. No, right, not people applying for jobs, no.
So the follow-up question was just to make sure we were talking about working for people in Reedfield versus working for the town of Reedfield.
Right.
Right, okay.
Correct.
Any comments on that? You've been,
Sure. I would just like to say thank you to the contractors that actually do contracted work for the town of Reedfield, of which there are many. So I really hear that. And I think to myself, we do get things done in town. And if there are contractors that are carrying personal vendettas, I encourage them to somehow process those feelings and begin to bid on things in town if they really want the work. And so that's how I feel about it. I feel like if your personal vendetta is keeping you from running your business, that's something that the town of Reedfield can't help with.
okay, so I'm going to go
But
back to
they,
one of our.
they don't need to work for Reedfield, Dennis. That's the point.
And they don't, I guess.
So I want to go back to a question here. This, talking about capital projects as opposed to the operating budget, capital projects. Is there what's the most pressing capital need of the community? I'll start with Dennis. I've lost track of who's in charge here. What's the most pressing capital need of the community that really needs to be addressed fully this year or start this year? Capital things like roads, buildings, parks, anything that involves a long-term outlay of money.
Yeah, I think when we look at the capital projects for Reedfield, we are able to see sort of a nice general mix. When I think about challenges in capital projects or what I'm worried about, I always worry about the way that to me, it's the way the town is a member and part of a community in a school that I feel like is a lot of the budget area. Capital things for the town, like the park, I'm very excited about. The recreation area at the fairgrounds, I think, is important. I think the way that that offers opportunity for the town is important. But I also think that things like having listening to the fire department and putting in having the fire truck be voted on as a separate item because it's being bonded is also a capital improvement that we also are dedicated to. I think that we've done a very good job with maintaining roads, maintaining a lot of the utilities and things like that for the town. And I'm proud of that.
Okay. David, any capital projects that you'd like to see really undertaken or move toward completion?
Other than the necessities, the way we are right now with the economy and rising costs for everybody, in a time when the economy is good and prices are way up, I don't think it's the time to be, one, putting more money on the tax bill of the taxpayers, and two, it's not the time to get the best price. So if we don't really need it, we shouldn't be spending it.
Anyone in the audience have a question on clarification about capital items, sir?
Well, I think mine's more on budget
Okay.
and a cost to the actual taxpayer. It's my understanding that the mill rate has increased almost a little over a full percent. To people that may not mean anything, but to me, being on the committee, I see that, and I believe it went to 17 point something. I see that as $1,700 per thousand out of my pocket. And everybody else's pocket too, not just me. And if you have a $200,000 house, that's actually going to be $3,400. Whether you like it or whether you don't like it. Doesn't make sense that mill rate has to continue to increase and increase collecting money from the town taxpayers.
So
We have all
what's
these
the question?
The question is, why can't we maintain our mill rates?
Okay, let's deal with that. Question is about the mill rate. The mill rate's under pressure. What can we do about stabilizing the mill rate as opposed to letting it rise up with other costs? David.
Well, for one, like I said, I mean, there's always going to be rising costs and everything. You can't say that you can always keep a flat line because inflation and prices go up. I mean, that's just the way it is. But I think there are things you can do that are, again, not necessity items Everybody's feeling the crunch of heating oil and groceries. Everything has skyrocketed through the roof. And I don't feel like now is the time to be spending money like a drunken sailor with all kinds of goodie projects to build things that, again, okay, we want a ball field. I'm not against a ball field. I'm all for a ball field. But $700,000 for a ball field, okay? And this is the disconnect with contractors. If you go around other towns, people in town build the ball fields. People raise money for the ball fields. I'm all for it. When I was in Gardner, we wanted lights on the football field. One of the local businessmen, Bob Maville, great guy, owned Able Auto Parts. He spearheaded that effort. He coordinated all the contractors. He donated lots of money himself. And we got lights on the football field. And it didn't cost the taxpayers or the school system a nickel. Now, again, back to alienating contractors, we got a ball field built over there for absolutely free before we alienated them all. And now we want to spend $700,000 at a time when prices are going through the roof and people are deciding whether they want to eat tonight or heat their house. So your answer, Al, yeah, I think at this point, the way costs are, I think we should stick to necessities and make that mill rate increase a minimum.
Okay, thank you. Dennis, same question about keeping mill rates as flat as possible.
You got it. First, I'm going to point out that $700,000 was never anything that was worked for the ball field. And now the proposal that will be voted on June 13th is to use no taxpayer money. So I just want to make sure that your tax bill will not be affected. That's the plan going forward. The mill rate actually went down the last 3 out of the 4 years. It's going back up this year. That's because of the sort of natural undulation of it. The Reed Field valuation as a town has gone up over the past 4 years as well. So when I hear people, when I hear people talk about the crunch and feeling it, I don't deny that. But we know inflation is going down, and we know that people are moving into this town, and the valuation of our town is going up. And so the bottom line is Reed Field is currently enjoying a period of success that is seen in real estate, that is seen in property, things that are being sold, and businesses moving into town. So I can't control the mill rate. I think the mill rate is it's kind of a red herring. It's not a really great way to figure out the best, the way that taxes are in the town. So I hear that, but the mill rate, I think, in Reed Field is manageable to offer the same level of services that we're used to, as David says, the bare necessities.
May I?
Yeah, you can have, sure.
This mill rate will reflect enough money to cover the budget. Is it for this increase?
Yes, that is correct. Yes, absolutely. You said that. Yep.
You could reduce the mill rates because you're not going to spend all this money.
Artificial, yeah, I wouldn't want to
Sorry,
artificially
just a
reduce the
second.
mill rate. We've seen that work
I'm just
before.
not sure
So,
what your question was.
yeah.
My question is, why do we have to spend all this money on these projects to make the town better? I can't believe it the way it is and have that.
Keep the mill rate the same, you mean?
And keep the mill rate the same.
Okay.
Well, like David said, things going up, costs are going up, right? We know that there's going to be an increase. The municipal side of the budget is only up 4% this year. So that includes all the projects, anything that is a part of the mill rate is only going up 4%. So that's all I know.
David, anything you want to add to that?
Well, I was more of a question. Who's building the ball field for free?
Well, no one's going to build the ballpark for free. What's going to happen is we are asking the people of Reed Field on June 13th to approve a plan where we will find grants and donations, just like you said about folks, businesses in town, and that gives us the go-ahead. One of the biggest ones is from a Department of Wildlife Conservation and Wildlife grant, which we saw work in Winthrop at Norcross Point. They kicked in almost half of the money for that. And then that's an exciting thing, but we need the approval on the 13th to move forward with getting those grants.
Okay.
So
I wanna-
grants aren't taxpayers' money?
I don't know
You
the
don't
answer
know?
to that. I
The
mean,
cloud
I
comes
guess.
over and drops $100 bills on you.
Let's stick-
Well, I'm certain. Yeah, that's it.
They are taxpayers' money.
So
Grants
the-
are taxpayer money.
I want to switch to technology for a second. Yep, sure, sure.
So this is from a parent who can't be here. The fairgrounds project was a simple ball field and a simple basketball court. The basketball court was having $1,000 donation from our Maranico graduate, who was Mr. Basketball, who got a Gatorade winning and was putting it all to the basketball court. The father of that gentleman is a bit disturbed, and he was hoping parents would speak out because the basketball court has been eliminated and preference to a perennial garden. The fairgrounds is a place we were hoping for kids to play with just mowed grass where balls can be thrown and bicycles ridden, and that's where the cost has gotten astronomical. To either of you, I'm not sure where we got away from a simple place for the kids to play, and we're worried about perennials for butterflies. But what's your opinion on the fate of the basketball court and the fairgrounds?
Okay, let me just restate the question for you, because the question has to do with, and we'll stick to the principles of it rather than the details, but the question has to do with the plan for the use of the fairgrounds property with respect to basketball, which may or may not have happened. Yep, so that may be a question for a budget committee, I don't know, but let's ask them as their candidates, what their view would be on the usage of that property and how it may have changed. Start with Dennis.
Sure. We wanted to add the basketball court, but right now what we found a consensus on is the softball field and being on the same level of the baseball field. As far as I understand, and I'm a part of the committee, there's been no elimination totally of the basketball court in the discussion. It's not in the newest plan because we wanted to do it in bits, I guess. It really, it's part of the conversation. There was nothing, the perennial garden or the butterfly pollinator garden had always been a part of the plan, the old plan and the new plan. So nothing has, that hasn't replaced anything on it. I would still like to see the basketball courts eventually be a part of that. But when you work together on a committee, sometimes you have to find a consensus and you have to give some things up to get some things. And that's an example of doing that in that committee. So I want there to be outdoor basketball courts in Reed Field, and I hope that we can find the right spot to put them, whether that's at the fairgrounds, hopefully, or somewhere else.
David.
I think I heard that question a little bit differently, is that he donated $1,000 with the intentions of it going towards a basketball court, and the basketball court is now put on hold. What should we do? And I would say either you build the basketball court or you give his donation back, because that's where it was intended to go.
Okay. So I'm going to move on to technology. The question was, well, I've lost my question. Let me ask you a different question for a minute, because this is a question I don't understand. It has to do with the Select Board Procedures Manual, and since I don't know what that is, I'll let you explain it to me. But presumably, everyone's familiar with the Select Board Procedures Manual, either who's on the board or who's seeking to be on the board. So are there some takeaways you've received for yourself out of evaluating or hearing about or reading or working under the manual? Start with David.
Other than the ones that I've spoken about on how we run the meetings and the lack of public input at the meetings. I think it's.
So those would be, just let me ask you a follow-up. Those are either aspects of the manual as to how meetings are run, or they're failures of the manual and how to run meetings that don't allow public input or don't facilitate public input? Is
Yes.
that what you're saying?
Yep.
Okay. Dennis, any comments on the manual?
Sure. As chairman of the committee, I run the meetings, and so we set the agenda and things like that.
Can you just tell us what the manual is for those of us who don't
Sure. The
work in-
manual is basically the outline about what the select board is to do, the process and procedures of the select board, and ways that the select board can conduct their business. things that regulate, getting together, things that regulate, what can be on your election signs, people, things like that. So I would say that when it comes to public input, we welcome it. Our numbers are on the website. Our emails are on the website. I've had calls from people before. We've had meetings where no one comes, where no one's on Zoom. And so, short of driving them to the meeting, I can't imagine any other way to better engage folks and to get that. We also, we give folks a time to speak because it's a part of the agenda. It's a public meeting. And so we want to keep things together. And that's on me. So I feel like the public, if they want to have something to say, they've always had a time to say it. The other thing I would say about the manual, the takeaway from the manual is that the select board is not the guardian of everything that goes through the town. The select board is an instrument that is used to help financial matters and rules. And that's part of what that procedures outlines, is we listen and we give choices. We work with other groups. We work with other committees. And so in that manual, it just sort of sets that up and gives a better way of understanding how the select board operates in respect to the rest of the town.
Okay, any questions from the audience at this point? Sir, I'll come back to you, sir.
Since there's a little bit of this really couple of times now, since we don't want to speak about this, in my experience at the school board, which I think is so right. So for the incumbent, since 2017, why hasn't that been changed yet? Why are we still complaining about it? And the Challenger wrote me really what we should do to fix that. Because clearly that is a problem, even though right now that it's not, this is a very lively discussion. We never have these. And anytime other than the candidates. And I think that's a problem.
So if you have a dinner, I'll come. So the question is, sorry about that. So the question is, there seems to be a dichotomy of views here about not being able to speak freely or extensively in meetings. And on the other hand, we do welcome input and it's received. So can you talk about, both of you, I know you both have feelings on this, which is good, actually good, about how you feel the public is actually participating and how you think it could be not more, better. Start with Dennis.
I hear your question. I think when things come to the town meeting, we have an opportunity. We always include public communications. If a simple beefing up of that time would be helpful, or to offer more time to folks that would come out and speak, that's something I'd be willing to do. I've also had times where people want to come to speak and there's only one person, and I'm not sitting here, with my watch going. But I would say that in some instances this year, we've had folks that want to come here and just sort of have really begin to speak about things that aren't that have no purpose, that are circular, that are that we feel like we've heard what they've had to say, and so times where that I will say, listen, this, you've had 5 minutes. But I don't think I've ever said to someone, no, I don't want to let people go because, we only have this amount of time. I like to be a time person, but I don't ever want to cut you off if what you're saying is passionate and we're hearing it for the first time. I think that sort of thing is something easy. I think that ultimately, if you come to the meeting, if the meeting is the first time we hear about it, or if the meeting is the first time you have something to say, sometimes that meeting cannot find the resolution to whatever that problem is. We're not, you know what I mean? It's like in that meeting, I may not be able to answer or to reply or give an educated response to a question because I haven't had time, or I might be hearing it for the first time. So when I talk about our numbers being online, our emails being online, I make it a point to respond to every email I get from anyone. And I always make sure that people know that I will respond to them. And I mention to people too, if you want to bring this up to the meeting, please go ahead. So I would say that, you know, if there are disgruntled folks who feel like they didn't get a chance to say what they want to say, I invite them to come back. So thank you.
David,
Well,
this is about how we get heard. And
yes, yeah. If you haven't been here very long, Dennis, but there have been many times where the clock has been set and people have been shut down because they've over their 2-minute mark many times over the years. I think it's important that everybody speak. And if everybody in this room wants to stand up at the microphone and tell me the same thing, I think that's important. That 50 people all stand up and agree with the same thing. Not just, I don't just need to hear it once so everybody can say, well, one person said that. And if the next person gets up, well, we already heard it. I want to know everybody feels the same way. And if there's emails with questions that come in, I think every one of those emails ought to be read at the meeting. If I'm going to come down here on Monday night for a select board meeting, I'm not on a time frame. I didn't do this because I'm watching my clock. I work 90 hours a week most of the time. So really, I'm not on a schedule. So your answer is everybody should be able to speak. Now, to his point, yeah, I mean, if somebody's rambling on, saying the same thing 17 times, I mean, I think it's appropriate to say, we got your point. Okay, so allow somebody else to speak.
Anyone else have a comment, sir, in the back?
Yeah, mine's regarding roads. I mean, we've heard, I've been in this town about 10 years now. There's been some investments made in roads. I live on Moose Road, for example.
Mhm.
There was a bunch of money spent. And it was told to me that the wrong size gravel was put on that road, and we're gonna come back to that road. I believe that to be true. My father-in-law's a contractor in Southern Maine, and he's like, the town got homes there. And it was admitted, but nothing was ever done. There's been multiple houses added to Moose Road. There's, I think, building permits out to build 2 to 3 more homes. You look at Church Road, that road's a mess. I could go on. Has there been any thought, or do you have any opinions on an outside look at what we can do to our roads to make them better and more passable? And when we spend money, make sure we're spending it correctly.
So the question has to do, it has to do at the heart about an oversight process for the condition and planning for roads. Start with David.
I think that should be prioritized every year, what roads need to be done first and foremost. You know, what one's the worst, what needs to happen. There should be somebody overseeing that and making sure that those things don't happen with the wrong material. And I think what we're lacking now that we used to have in the past, we used to have our own people out there who had a vested interest watching that would come down or actually doing the work, who would come down and say, hey, they're putting the wrong material in there. We don't have that anymore. You know, we're down to, again, contractors from where? I don't know where they are, you know. Getting whatever bid will actually show up in the door, and that's what you get, shoddy work. So yeah, there should be some prioritization, and there should be somebody, I would actually say there should be like an elected road commissioner in this town, like it is in many towns, and it works very well.
So I'm just going to take a second and tell the people online that there is an opportunity for you to ask questions if you wish. The people in the audience here who ask questions, I do try to summarize the questions so that you online can hear it. If you're not hearing the summary, then I will try to fix that. We're coming sort of to the end of our hour.
Can I answer the question about the loose road and the roads?
I'm sorry.
Is that okay? Because I know exactly, I could actually
Absolutely.
answer your
Sorry.
question.
Sure.
So there is a schedule. Eric Dyer, who is the road commissioner, has a schedule of the roads, which is on a time period. It's not so rigid as to expect that there are things that, you know, if there's a road that needs emergency, there's contingencies in there. But there is a road commissioner, that's the town manager, and he has a schedule of when the roads are redone and when the roads are scheduled to be resurfaced, et cetera, et cetera. Speaking of Church Road, that is a project that we are working on right now. Church Road is undergoing complete repavement. In fact, we just discovered at the last select board meeting that the foundation under a larger part of the Church Road it needs to be ground out. So we had to make a change order and approve that, because what had happened was it had just been laminated over in the past. And this is this is church year's time in the rotation. So it's being dug out, it's being regraded, it's being done right. And Pike is doing that for us.
Yes, ma'am.
I'm sorry, this is for someone else that could be here tonight recovering from surgery. This year, our contractor was required to have a GPS system on their snow plows, which we are paying for on a monthly basis. For one, do you agree with that? And for two, what was the necessity that was instituted?
Okay, let me just repeat the question. The question was that the winter snowplow contractors were required, is that what you said?
Not winter.
To have a GPS device on it that apparently lets somebody know where they're at. So the question was, why is that? And do you agree that that's an appropriate technique to manage snowplow contractors? Start with Dennis.
Sure. Yes, as a matter of fact, I think it's a great idea, and I'll tell you why. We talk about being so concerned about the budget, having contractors and making budget things. One of the reasons why I think that's a good idea is because we're using that GPS system to collect data about how long, how certain roads, we're tracking all of that equipment so that we have data on things like how long it usually takes, et cetera, et cetera. It is certainly not meant as a way to keep overlooking the contractor at all. It's meant to give us data on how long, the amount of times that a car has to go out, things like that. So the reason I think that's important is because with that data, what we can do is we can start to look to the future when we do have to put bids back out, so that we can be very specific about not only how much it costs, what the time investment is, but also we have a sense from the data what kind of ballpark figure we can start to look at by going back to those numbers. We also want to collect that data so we have better bidders, because we know that Mr. Horn is getting out of the business as well. And so having that information to prepare ourselves for the next bid, I think will be important.
David, same question. Do you agree that these are important and necessary, and why?
Absolutely ridiculous. Nothing screams distrust and micromanagement more than putting GPS systems in a private contractor's truck. And personally, if you were going to put them in mine, I'd tell you what you could do with them. That's ridiculous, right? That data, what I don't even understand why that would be relevant. Somebody puts a bid in, and they're bound to the contract. You put your stipulations in the bid. If you want your bid less, then you change your bid. We've come up with a standard in this town to plow the roads. That's why your roads are so high. Back when we went back to bidding contracts, everybody was so mad about it. We sat right in this room, and we were going to make the hardest contract ever to bid on, just to be mad at the contractors. Well, who did that screw? Us, the taxpayers. I've sat in the meetings and said, well, why is LaGrange so much cheaper per mile than Reedfield? It's similar towns. Because LaGrange doesn't want black pavement in the middle of the worst snowstorm of the year. They're not concerned about that. So the terms you lay out in the contract are not really relevant to your GPS system.
Okay, any other questions? Ma'am in the back? Yes.
Yes. So, meeting, and it's probably going to be for them, because I don't think you know the answer to this.
Well, they both get a shot at it. We'll see.
Okay. There were extra costs that were being established for the church road to actually, instead of just paving over the church road, they're actually going to dig it up and put new gravel and materials. I did not hear, I heard that that was voted for, but I did not hear that there was a max budget. And I feel like that, if there's no cap, is there like, is it open-ended?
Okay, so the question has to do with something we talked about earlier about discovered information about the foundations for the church road that required additional work. And the question is, even though that the extra work may have been approved, that we don't, you and we don't have a sense of how much the extra cost would be and whether it's
The
limited.
extra cost was approximately 75,000. But the town manager noted in there just to approve the estimates with, or the material, not the estimates. And that I didn't hear that there was a max or a cap.
Okay, so the question really still is, was in the process of evaluating extra work on that, was there any kind of a, let's make it more generic. Is there a process for establishing caps and limits on work extensions for contracts and other work? I'll start with you, but David, you probably have a view.
Sure, absolutely. Yeah. So there's when we get the bid comes in and we approve it, where there's always the possibility of having a change order. And a change order just is something that was new to the work. And so what happened was that change order, Stephanie, I think that you're talking about, was the road ended up needing to be dug out longer than we originally thought. So for example, it was 3,500 feet instead of 2,700 feet. And there is money set aside for contingencies just like that. So it's already been voted on. It's a road sort of contingency fund. I don't want to say reserve fund or misspeak, but that money is set aside for instances just like that, where if something comes up where we want to do it right, we need to spend that money.
That is the general fund, but that general fund is not open-ended.
That's correct.
Contractors, if next month or within 2 weeks, the material goes like ridiculously priced, we're just gonna go with it. We're not gonna.
No,
Let me just,
no.
let me just,
I feel like there should be a cap on it.
let me just
There is a limit, and we have a basic policy in town where whatever reserve fund we're using, we don't let it drop, or we try not to let it drop below a certain amount in instances just like that.
So the question was whether there's a systemic solution to cost overruns or cost limits, and that's what your answer
And
was.
we have those.
Okay, so I want to give David a chance to answer the same question about change orders, I guess, how change orders would be handled in a contracting situation for you. How do you view them?
Well, there's always a possibility of something unforeseen circumstances in any job. I mean, I hate to comment on the specifics of what Stephanie's talking about because I don't know all the details, but I mean, there are, no job is perfectly bidden and approached exactly how you foresee it happening, especially when you're digging in the ground, you know. I mean, there's ways to do that with core samples and know what your material is underneath, but I don't know exactly what the problem is there, so.
I guess my question would be, would it go back? I would think that it should go back to a vote. It would go, we approve it for this amount, and then if it does go over that, or the costs are astronomical over that, I mean, we all know that the price of materials and things.
Right.
I mean, she brought goes from $85 to $15 back to 50. Like, is there a point where we're maxing out and then we need to come back to the table and say,
Right. Okay.
you know, I just want to make sure that.
I think there should be.
Yeah.
I think everyone agrees with the principles of protecting upside costs.
Yeah.
So I have two questions. One, we're going to wrap this up and I'm going to give you each a couple minutes to summarize. But first of all, I've been asked to ask iPhone mom to silence her screen. Maybe you have a barking dog. I don't know, but something's making noise.
iPhone.
Sorry about that. But I got to deal with that over here. Okay, so we started with David. So Dennis, you can wrap up a couple minutes, and David, you can wrap up a couple minutes. Why would we vote for you?
Sure.
Why would I vote? I can't vote for you, so
I'm so excited that there's this many people here tonight. I'm glad that there's so many people, hopefully people on Zoom. And I think it does speak to a healthy democracy to have two candidates that care about our town. But one of the things, I think the fundamental difference is that I I am excited about the future of Reed Field and how it has basically really sprung out in the last 6 years while I have been on the select board and watched the town just sort of continue to fill empty buildings that once sat empty and now have businesses in them, like Kurt and Debbie. I like that there are places in town that are thriving, new storage areas, things that used to sit dormant are now beginning to find life in Reed Field. I also want to say that sometimes I think that it doesn't take a lot of effort and it doesn't take a lot of research to throw out a comment or to throw out a thought or to have something completely, out there that says things in this town are bad. I think that's a lazy thing to say because it doesn't really reflect the fact of the matter. And the fact of the matter is our town is doing well. Our town has a lot of great resources and people that are helping us to make the most of those resources. I think we have great businesses in town. And sometimes when we talk about adding new businesses and wanting new businesses, sometimes I think that's a backhanded compliment to the businesses that have been in Reed Field for as long as they have. So I want to make sure that people know that I believe that Reed Field is a great place to live. I've enjoyed immensely collaborating with other members and committee members in the last 6 years for the select board. And I want to do as much as I can to continue that work and to move Reed Field forward. I know it's easy sometimes to say that things are bad, to point out all the bad stuff, but I've never been that way. I've always been a glass half full kind of guy. And one of the things that I see in this room is I see a lot of people who care about our town, who care enough to give your Monday night to come out here and to listen to what we have to say. And I think that's the best part about our town. I think Reed Field has an incredible population. And I'm glad to not only live here, I'm glad to be on the select board, and I'm glad to be running for re-election. As always, you can email me, you can call me. My number's on the website. My email's on the website. Don't let the only time you come talk to me be at a select board meeting. I'd love to hear from you. So thank you very much to everyone here. Thank you everyone at home. Thank you. And also thanks to Dave for running. It's never an easy thing, but I think it's a sign of a healthy democracy.
Great, thank you. David?
Well, I think ideas of progress are totally opposite. I'm a Mainer, and I've been here my whole life. And I raised my kids in a little town, simple town, farm town, a lot of trades. I'm all about business. Obviously, I'm a business person. I am not about bringing the city to our little town. I'm not about bringing grants in, which we are proposed as free money and free to the taxpayers. As we well know, that is not. There are always contingencies with grants. I think before we go and vote on another sidewalk, I'm all for, if the people vote and want a sidewalk, fine. Well, let's put the actual information out to them. And we have not tracked what that sidewalk that we've already put in costs. We have not separated the labor costs. We've not separated the equipment costs. We're going to turn this into, now we're hiding money in an account that we didn't want to separate $50,000 a year for open space. I mean, where are we going with that? Does this go down the road of the state bill that's up right now, where we're going to mandate affordable housing? I don't want our little town to look like Lewiston. I want to preserve our little town. And I think many of you came here from a place that you didn't like, that was like Lewiston. And you came here because you love this little town. Now, why would you want to change it like that? So let's live within our means and stop taking other money. Everything you implement in this town is a cost. Whether you see it as free or it's sold as free or not, everything has a cost. You build a building, there's a forever cost to that. There's maintenance to it forever. There's liabilities to it forever. So think before we do those things, because they last forever. When we enter into contracts like the sidewalk or grants with contingencies that go on forever, you know, and you sit up here as a select board member 10 years down the road and you say, well, there's nothing I can do about it. And you're absolutely telling the truth, because there is nothing you can do about it. Because 10 years before, somebody put that in your corner and you can't get it out. I want to get back to community. My idea of community is to help my neighbor, not with a grant, not with somebody else's money. People seem to want to get on select boards and policy, into politics now to be a philanthropist with somebody else's checkbook. If you want to help somebody, help them with your money, with your resources, with your skills. Go next door and help your neighbor. That's how I grew up, and that's how I want my kids to grow up, and that's why I'm here.
Thank you very much. To both of you and to the audience for being still attentive. We'll take a few minute break and then we'll do this for the school board candidates who are here. And I would say, I can't see the IT folks, but let's say it's now 7:36. So how about 7:45? That's 9-10 minutes.